Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, bringing you episode 144 here at the tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. So, as I explained in the Christmas episode, I'm really against people who don't count a season to remember as being canon based on the fact that they don't like it. I think just because you don't like it is not a reason to discount it altogether. And what's worse is you say that it's not canon because you don't like it, but you can't present any evidence to point out why it wouldn't be canon. And in the case of A Season to Remember, people don't like the ending where Tommy is married to Catherine. That rubs people the wrong way for some reason. And they'll say, well, it doesn't count because I don't want him with Catherine, or he's going to get with Kimberly, or something along those lines. And then when you press them for further information, they'll go ahead and say, well, look in Dino Thunder. He obviously gets with Principal Randall, or he gets with Haley. There's no way it could be Catherine that he gets with. Which to me is, that's just kind of stupid, guys. You don't like it, and you're reaching for straws there, or wherever, grabbing for straws, wherever the expression is, to say it shouldn't count because you don't like it. Starting with that premise, I don't like it, therefore it doesn't count, and here are the very few, if any, reasons I can go ahead and give, and that irks me to no end. Now, as previously stated, I don't like RPM, and I didn't want to count it as Power Rangers, but as a true fan, I have to count it. Frankly, let's be honest, RPM is more canonical than Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. It just is, because it does take place in the main Power Rangers universe, sort of. Again, until Samurai, we didn't know there was an alternate dimension. Even though it's an alternate dimension, they've actually had interaction with the primary universe. So again, it's more canonical than what we have for the Power Rangers movie. Nevertheless, just because I didn't like it is not a reason to discount it. I have to accept it and I have to go ahead and move on. And I think a lot of people have to do that with whatever season they don't like. You can't say, I don't like Lost Galaxy, therefore I'm not going to count it. I don't like Time Force, so I'm not going to count that. Although I don't know who would be saying any of those. But of course, the one that everybody says is, I don't like Megaforce. And there are a number of people who out there say, I don't count Megaforce as a season. I don't think it happens. I don't think it's canon with the main Power Rangers universe. Fair enough, but what's the evidence on that? Well, a lot of people will point to inconsistencies with the history, not mentioning things, and just those things that crop up around the series. But I don't think that's substantial enough to say it didn't happen and say that Megaforce is non canonical with the series. But I recently finished watching Linkara's History of Power Rangers for about the dozenth time. And after watching about maybe the fourth or fifth time on there, I started to actually think about a couple of things. I took some notes, I went back and rewatched some clips, went further back before Megaforce to look at a few things, and I'm going to treat you guys with an interesting fan theory that I have developed for Power Rangers Megaforce. And here's the thing. I don't like Megaforce. I don't. I don't like Super Megaforce. I think it's worse than Megaforce. But again, I've had to count them as canon. But when I started thinking about what I'm about to share with you guys, I think there's a way you can discount Megaforce, not just because we don't like it, but because there is evidence to support that Megaforce never happened. That Megaforce as we know it is not real and thus not part of Power Ranger canon. And let's add to that, what if I were to tell you that the mastermind behind the non-reality that is Megaforce is none other than Tommy himself? Do I have your attention? And I'm not just saying that because the world of Power Rangers rises and falls on Tommy. That's not the case at all. Again, after watching Megaforce, looking at a couple of things here, I believe that what we see in Megaforce is not real at all and that Tommy is responsible for it. and I'm going to present you guys with as much evidence as possible here. Maybe there's some things that I've missed. Maybe there's some things I didn't go ahead and think of. But I'm going to tell you guys everything that I have in here, and we're going to see if it fits. And I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this. All right, so let's start with this premise. The reason I say Megaforce did not happen or does not happen as we know it is I think Megaforce is one big simulation. Whether it's a holodeck or a semi-deck in case of Power Rangers, or it's something akin to the Matrix. I think the world of Megaforce is but a simulation played out for at least one of our Rangers. And I think the person who's in charge of the simulation is Tommy. Now, why do I think it's a simulation first? Well, everybody says there's all these inconsistencies within Megaforce. When Gosei says the Earth has never seen an invasion like this before, where in the past, again, we've had Countdown to Destruction, we've had all these other episodes, the final episodes where, the end of time, where the world is being invaded, being attacked, and it looks like it's the end of the world. We've had all those episodes before. But this series doesn't make mention of that. As an anniversary series, it doesn't recognize the history of Power Rangers whatsoever. We have characters like Mr. Burley who believe in aliens, and yet when they see aliens, they're surprised like they've never seen before, like this stuff hasn't been happening for 200 years or centuries, when you think about the whole universe as itself. And we get civilians like, are you like some sort of hero after they're saved by the Power Rangers? There's a lot of discontinuity about that. And what I offer is that this simulation is incomplete. That I think there's a simulation where it's likely Troy and maybe the other Rangers are being put through some sort of test where they're in a fictionalized world where nobody's heard of Power Rangers, but there is this Power Rangers history. To where we look at the discontinuity, it's the idea that it's programmed to be the real world with no reference to Power Rangers or aliens, but there is Power Rangers history programmed in through Gosei, through Tensu and everything for the purposes of the simulation. Because what I think it is I think it's a training simulation for the Power Rangers to test someone to see if they are worthy enough to be Power Rangers. And in this particular season, that I think Troy and maybe the other Rangers are being tested by Tommy to see whether or not they are worthy to be Power Rangers. Now, let's start with Tommy. Why do I think it's Tommy? First of all, as you will recall with Project Hexagon, what was Tommy trying to do in that? He was trying to actually start teams of Power Rangers to travel across the universe, across the planet to stop threats wherever they are. And as part of Project Hexagon, they were going to recruit several new teams of Rangers. Now, how would you train a team of Rangers? Well, field duty would be one of those things. But what if Tommy considered the fact that, I was a teenager when this started and I was essentially drafted into a war, and I couldn't handle it. I made mistakes. It was because of my arrogance that we lost the Thunder Zords. It's because of my stupidity that this happened, that the power coins were lost, or whatever. Tommy blames himself because he didn't have the proper training and feels that he needs to train new teams of Power Rangers, and that the safest way to do that, as opposed to, just throwing them into combat like he and the others were, would be to simulate that combat so that they're completely safe, but he can still test them. Now, I know you're going to go ahead and say the Project Hexagon does not actually count as canon, and you would be correct in that, but we have seen canonically that Tommy was training other Rangers. Look at Dino Thunder. He trains a team of Rangers there, they're thrown into the mix, and they do save the day, but let's be honest, they weren't really in the best position to be Rangers in the first place. They themselves were arrogant, they were stupid, they were, closed into their own world and all that. They just weren't really ready to be Power Rangers. So what if down the line Tommy's like, we do need to have some new Power Rangers out there, and of course we know that Tommy has access to the morphing grid. Haley's there to help him make morphers and everything, so he can make another team of Power Rangers just in the same way that was done with the Dino Thunder Rangers. And along with that, consider this as well. We do see new powers in Megaforce, And if we actually look back to the episode A Bully for Ethan, as we're on the Dino Thunder page, or the Dino Thunder topic here, excuse me, I'm actually looking at Ranger Wiki to get a lot of the specific information for you guys. I got that pulled up. But we will see the Live Man logo, the Changeman logo, the Mask Man logo, the Die Ranger, the Flashman, the Goggle 5. All those logos are present in Tommy's lab. So what are they exactly? Are they past teams of Rangers? Rangers from other planets? Simulations of other Power Rangers? It seems odd to me that Tommy would have that information and wouldn't do anything with it. So is it possible that he makes a simulation where he has all this Power Rangers information and dumps it in there, whether it's Power Rangers from Earth or not? Because I would say that Tommy has been researching Power Rangers, and when programming this simulation, he put in all the Power Rangers. He put in the Live Man. He put in the Mask Man. He put in the Die Rangers into this simulation without fully thinking about it, because in his mind, this is just a simulation to see how they would react, as opposed to being anything historically accurate. And let's also consider that in the Mighty Morphin Mutants episode, all the way back in season 1, we're told that Tommy is forgetful. That is a personality trait that he has. It's a flaw of his. And I don't think there's been any episode to go ahead and say that, hey, it's, he's over that. I don't think anything is said that he's over that in the future. And then we see another episode, I believe it's Blue Ranger Gone Bad, where Tommy's also bad at art. He's bad at designing things. He's bad at making things. So when you combine that he's doing a training exercise, that he's bad at art and making things, and that he's often forgetful, and that he has all this information regarding Power Rangers, well, doesn't it stand to reason that he would make a simulation that isn't complete, that's not very good, that is discontinuous with its own self, that has these types of errors in it? Doesn't seem that far-fetched, does it? And the fact that he would be using it to test out Power Rangers. And of course, one of the things that actually leads me to believing it's a simulation is think back to the first episode of Megaforce. What is that opening scene? Yes, we are seeing the legendary battle, but it's actually Troy's dream that he's having. Or is it? Typically in fiction, if you start off an episode, a book, or a movie within somebody's dream, then it's likely that the film itself is a dream, that the film itself may not be real, that may be taking place in our protagonist's head. And there are tons of fan theories about films that are like that are all but a dream. So what if the legendary battle was the real world, and that Troy is the dream? That everything after that point is the illusion. It is the simulation that he's in. I'm not going to say it's a dream because that's just too easy, but it would be a subtle clue, of course, that he is dreaming to a degree, that is a simulation that he is in. But here's some other discontinuity that's kind of odd that this would have in here. Because again, Tommy's forgetful. Maybe once he programs something, he has to program it again, or he forgets to put something in, like the teleportation inconsistency. Hey, what they had in the first episode, but they never have it again. Maybe he programmed it in there as a shortcut, but forgot to add it back in or use it consistently. That's one thing. What about Noah's magic iPad within the series? If you actually look at the computer screens that he has, he's not actually looking at footage of past Ranger teams. He's looking at footage from the future. Because if you actually look at a couple of the images, when he sees them, it's like Wild Force, Ninja Storm, Lightspeed Rescue, whatever, he's naming the teams, and you see the footage on there, it's actually footage that we see in later episodes. And there's footage of when they are in their super mega forms, morphing into the overdrive forms. Now, that's not the past. That's not history. That is the future. So it's kind of odd that he has access to the future. Not to mention, what about the Zords coming out of the Megazord? And we see the Lion, which at that point, they hadn't even gone to find the Lion yet. Why would he have access to a wild Zord that they hadn't even discovered at that point? Again, discontinuity in there, which could be, through Tommy himself. Here's another thing to go ahead and think about. Linkara actually points out that when they earn their powers, that it's just like an XP bar they have to fill. Well, what if that's exactly the case? What if Tommy, again, Tommy's not a wise mentor like Zordon, but what if he just programs it? Okay, if they do this, if they get this much experience, if they make to this point, then we automatically give them a Zord. It is, an HP power up or XP power up or something within the system. Well, then that would make sense they would get these power ups, that they would go through these battles, that they would go ahead and build up all this XP, and they would get new Zords, and maybe they're going through it a little bit quicker than you would expect. So that's certainly something to go ahead and consider that I think works into the theory here. But let's look at the discontinuity between other elements. Let's talk about the Wild Zords, the Lion Zord in particular, and Animaria. Well, again, Tommy's forgetful. Maybe he got the name pronounced wrong, so that would cover that. But also keep in mind, he's never been to the Animarium. Tommy only knows of the Animarium, most likely through secondhand knowledge from talking to Cole, because he met Cole in Forever Red. But he's never been to the Animarium. He never saw the Wild Zord. He's never met Princess Shayla or the other Wild Zords. So what if Tommy heard this story from Cole about the Animarium and all the animals and Princess Shayla and everything, but he programs it into the simulation, like, okay, I'm going to have them go to the Animarium to look for the Wild Zord. But he doesn't know what the Wild Zords look like. He just knows that it's a lion. So he programs a robotic lion. And since he needs it to combine with the Megazord that he's created for the Power Rangers, he makes it compatible with their Megazord, based on the original design or hearsay of it, but not the actual Zord itself. That would definitely explain the discontinuity of the Red Lion Zord in Megaforce. How it doesn't look anything like in Wild Force because it's not the real one. It's made from memory. Why didn't they encounter the other Wild Zords or Princess Shayla? He never met Princess Shayla. Maybe Cole never told him about her, so she's not in simulation at all. He doesn't have time to program enough of the Wild Zords, or he doesn't know what they look like. They just need to get the lion. That's the test he put for them. So he didn't even put anything that's not necessary in there. So think about that. Think about Casey as he appears. We see him in the cage with the tiger, works at the zoo. It's obvious that he works there, but after they learn Kung Fu and defeat the enemy come back, Casey's not there anymore, as if he was written out of the program. A lot of people say that's discontinuity and, it doesn't make any sense even within the context of the episode. But what if he was just programmed in there and had to be wiped out to save memory or something? That would explain Casey. What about Corneth? Well, again, Tommy has not directly interacted with anybody from the RPM universe, so what if he had this secondhand information about another dimension, where this Professor Cog came in, and that's why he's there, because he programmed Professor Cog based on somebody's telling of him. But all he heard is Cornus in another dimension, and it's a advanced city under a dome or something. And that what we get when we actually go to quote unquote Corneth is Tommy's interpretation based on what he has heard and not the actual Corneth. That he has not been able to use the subway to travel to that dimension, or that nobody from that dimension has come there to correct him on that information. You'll notice we don't actually see any of the RPM Rangers unmorphed, Dr. K, or anybody. So what if he just knows what they look like based on what the Samurai Rangers have told him, but he doesn't know anything else beyond what they look like and what their weapons are? It makes much sense to me. Not to mention, he makes up a Zord that has absolutely nothing to do with the other RPM Zords. So that's something to go ahead and consider. Also consider that Tommy has things like in there called the grocery store. He doesn't even have a name for the store because he's uncreative. He's just like, I need a grocery store. Okay, the grocery store. That makes a little bit of sense there. When Jaden comes in and disappears, same thing with Casey, but then Jaden says something to the regard of, we've been watching you. What if Tommy, is referring to he or his team of Rangers? They're watching them and evaluating their performance, giving them challenges to see if they are worthy of being Power Rangers. That's who's watching them. That it's not a bunch of Rangers sitting on the sideline, because that's another egregious error. Why is it the Earth is being invaded? All these Rangers have these powers, but they don't do anything because they're not programmed in there. That this is a simulation, that it's not real. That what these Rangers need to know is the history of Power Rangers, maybe to inspire them. And of course, they don't have the rest of the Power Rangers history in there, but only what they need to go ahead and have. And I would also argue, consider this. Because there are so many different Power Ranger fighting styles, like with Wild Force and Jungle Fury and Samurai, that the reason they have access to all these different powers is because they gotta find what fighting style works best for them. Maybe they're gonna give them powers based on Wild Force, or Kung Fu based powers, or sword based weaponry, or blaster based weaponry. They gotta find which is gonna work best for them. So maybe the purpose of the Ranger keys is to see what powers work well with. That would definitely be something to consider there. All right, I got a few other things here. Um, so of course, also take a look at the different villains that we've had. Why do we have so many different villains compressed into those 40 episodes? Well, maybe it's Tommy throwing everything at the wall. He throws the insect villains in there and find out, oh, that's too easy for those guys. All right, let me go ahead and throw these mutants in. They're too easy as well. Let's try the machines. They're a little bit more difficult, but they survive that. All right, what's the next thing I can throw out? How about an alien invasion? That Tommy keeps escalating the conflict a little quickly at that, just to see what they can go ahead and defeat, how strong they actually are, and gives them different powers. He starts them out with the Gosei powers, which I'll get into that as well, and then realizes, well, they met their match. They can't defeat him with these powers, so I'll give them brand new powers and see how they work with that. So that's certainly something. Also, other things they're kind of odd here. Emma being able to sing and have the flowers bloom. There are a lot of magical things that happen in Power Rangers, but I find that to be the most suspicious one. Maybe that's programmed in there that when she sings, the flowers bloom. That would definitely make a lot of sense. What about the concert they go to later in the series, where it's Mia, Terry, and Antonio doing the concert from Samurai? Not out of the realm of possibility that somebody filmed that concert on their phone. Tommy was able to download it and recreate it exactly, because it's exactly shot for shot, word for word. And that's what Tommy did. He just took it, copy pasted, and put it in there without even understanding the context of it. So that's another thing you can go ahead and chalk up to that. How easily the Armada was destroyed. Again, we see that they destroy so many of them in the second episode of Super Megaforce, and it's so easy, but then the next episode, they're all back to full strength. What if it is just that easy that Tommy made them really easy to defeat so that he can say, hey, look what I did here, or look at the Rangers, they were able to defeat these so easily. Because I think another thing to consider was that how confident can the Rangers get, and how overly confident they get. One of the things I really hate about the Megaforce Rangers is that they are too confident, borderline arrogant. When the Prince comes down and he introduces himself, and they're like, who are you? You're a little pipsqueak. I mean, that's basically their attitude. And what have we seen in Power Rangers history when the Power Rangers got overconfident? Their Zords are destroyed. They lose their powers. Things like that happen. So they become overconfident. Maybe that's what Tommy was trying to say. Do they become overconfident when I make it so easy for them? And maybe some other times he makes it more difficult to see what happens when they are shattered in their confidence. He's just revving up the dial to 11 sometimes. Sometimes he's got set on the novice level. There are a lot of different ways to interpret that. You just have to, consider what his motivations are at any given time. All right, so let's take a look here. Orion, his backstory. Maybe Orion also is real. Maybe he's not from Andrasia. Maybe he is human. Because look at Andrasia. It's pretty pathetic. Pretty sparse. Doesn't seem to have its own culture. Just seems to be copy and paste of Earth itself. And, maybe Tommy puts him there to, see what he does in isolation. See if he can find himself with the other Rangers. See if he would make a good leader. Maybe a good Sixth Ranger. But he has to be separated from the group in order to see what he does. Because you could put these Rangers in any situation and change the variables based on what you want to learn from them. And that's totally what Tommy could be doing here with Orion. Let's see. When Troy does whatever that spirit punch thing is, notice how Troy, again, it's been commented by Linkara that he's like a robot, that he's emotionless. Well, what if, Tommy was programming it to get emotion out of him to have a reaction? Maybe there is something about Troy. Maybe he's got the power inside of him to do this, and that Tommy had to rev it up to 11 with Robo Knight and everything to bring that emotion out to see if this inner power will come out. and it worked. So again, another thing to look at as far as discontinuity and what Tommy's doing in the simulation here. Okay, so let's take a look here. I got a few other things. Again, the things about aliens not existent because he programs it to be that way. We don't want aliens. I want to see how they react to aliens for the first time. One teacher, Mr. Burley, superfluous characters that don't mean anything. Let's see here. The multiple alien factions I already brought up. How minimalistic everything is. Look at the command center. Again, maybe Tommy didn't have time to design things like a bunch of rocks, Zed's fan in there, and the Ranger keys, and go say. That's all I need. Moving on from there. But what if we also look at it this way too? Maybe the Gosei powers and the Super Megaforce powers are not made up. Maybe they are based on real teams. Keep in mind that when we take a look at their cards for transformation, they still say Tensu Sentai Goseiger. They say Gosei Red. They say Gosei Black, and so on and so forth. What if, in the Power Rangers universe in Japan, there was a team of Rangers that called themselves the Gosagers? That there was indeed a Tensu Sentai Gosager in Power Rangers, or maybe from another universe that Tommy visited. Maybe Tommy visited the Sentai universe. Who knows? He has connection to the morphing grid, and he's able to see those types of things. So he decided to I can't come up with any new powers on my own, so I'm going to copy and paste the Gosei powers. Again, not too different what he did in Dino Thunder because, let's be honest, those suits are very reminiscent of the Mighty Morphin and are much simpler. They're not as complex because, well, Tommy can't design complex things. He can't create things on his own without help, so he finds this team called the Gosager, copies them, and he doesn't bother changing the stuff on the cards that they do say Gosei Red, that they are in katakana and hiragana, and he's like, I'll just leave them. That's no big deal. That he doesn't have the skill in order to go ahead and change it. Same thing with the Super Megaforce powers. Maybe there was a Gokaiger team out there he got these from, and he's just using them as a template as the power up. And again, same thing with the other, the other powers, that they are not original, that he is using pre-existing powers, and instead of using, say, Lightspeed Rescue or Wild Force or Ninja Storm, that he decided to just use different powers they've never seen before, because he's never seen them in action, so he's going to put two unknown variables, the Rangers and the powers, together to see what happens. I think that's indeed plausible there. And then, of course, the big thing is the legendary battle at the end of the series, because Linkara did bring up that there are multiple TJs, Cassie's, Ashley's, and Carlos's. But again, that's Robot Ranger, so that doesn't count in my mind, and that's just correction I would go ahead and make to him. But how do you explain Tommy showing up as the White Ranger and then later as the Green Ranger, and yet in the crowd shots we see the Black Dino Thunder Ranger, we see the Red Zeo Ranger, we see Go Ranger in there? Again, what if Tommy got this from multiple Sentai teams and he just threw them in there and said, they're Power Rangers, these guys won't know, they won't care about it? Or what if he is exact copy from the Mega War? Not to mention, again, I never noticed this until Linkara brought it up. When the Alien Rangers and the Ninja Storm Rangers are fighting against the X-Borg, we hear Tommy's "Htia! Sound going on. What if that's just Tommy recording his dialogue and putting it in there because he doesn't have the Alien Ranger voices or anybody's voices? He just has to make up as he goes. I mean, Tommy's a lot like me. I don't have the tools to do anything, so I just got to do what I can when I can. That's what he's doing. And that would explain why we have the Go Rangers and Jack and everybody in those background shots and things not making sense. And Robo Knight showing up out of nowhere because he just throws them in there and it doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, that's all I got for you guys there. That's what it is. That Megaforce is nothing but Tommy putting a bunch of Rangers through a simulation to see how they would react, to see if they're going to be good enough to be Power Rangers in the future. Whether you want to count the Hexagon project or based on Dino Thunder or just anything in general, that Tommy is trying to develop Power Rangers, and Tommy is the most likely culprit behind this because of his connection to the Morphing Grid, because of his history of past Rangers, because of his forgetfulness, because of his inability to do anything perfect when he needs help in doing that from Haley or other sources. That everything can be explained that's Tommy. Tommy is the reason that everything is bad, that there are problems, and that whatever's happening with the Rangers is just to find out how good they are. And the whole thing with Troy, why he's robotic, why he sounds that way. Heck, maybe he is a robot. That's a different one, to be sure. But of course, maybe part of it's to get him to feel emotion and bring out the power within, which is why we get that punch that cures Robo Knight, which can only be explained through computer programming, and that's Troy unleashing his true power and maybe saying to Tommy, yeah, he's worthy of this. And of course, that explains why the Rangers disappear at the end, because they're being deleted or eliminated from the program. That again, they are not the real Rangers themselves. And of course, we get no epilogue at the end of it. It's just sword and ground. That's it. And what if it ends with computer in program, and Tommy gets them say, "Hey, the last 2 years, yeah, that was all a simulation, but good job. You guys are officially Power Rangers," and that he makes them Power Rangers based off all that. So that's what I got. Those are things that I have written down. I like to think I've covered about as much of it as possible based on this, and I want to know what you guys think. Is this a sound theory? Am I missing anything? Is there new details you'd like to go ahead and add? Something that points that this is not possible whatsoever? Is there anything at all that you guys have to say? Because I like to think that this will be the next Darth Jar Jar theory, that this will spread through the internet and people will be like, oh, this does make sense. Now we can say Megaforce is non-canonical. Thank you, Rick the Barkeep. Thank you for helping us. Who knows? I would suggest share this with people and see what they think. So, all right. So that's my wild fan theory on Power Rangers, my crazy fan theory, whatever you want to go ahead and call it. Please discuss. Let me know what you guys think. I look forward to reading the comments. And again, as always, I'm very genuine about that. I want to see your comments. I want to know what you guys think about this. But until next time, thank you for listening. Have a good evening. And the tavern is now closed.